Okay, strap yourselves in. We are going deep into the geopolitical world today. We're taking a look at the conflict in Ukraine, and I have to say, some of the stuff I've been reading has been, well, intriguing is an understatement.
It really is a fascinating situation, isn't it? One of the biggest things that has stuck out to me is how President Zelensky's approach has seemingly shifted.
Yeah.
You know, his earlier emphasis on protecting the citizens of Ukraine, Europe, stability,
Right.
all of that seems to have taken a backseat to something kind of different.
Yeah.
Ukraine's mineral wealth.
Yeah, it's not just that he's bringing it up either.
Right.
He's going to President Trump and basically saying, hey, here's a victory plan for everybody. He's framing these resources as a way to get everyone economic benefits. He's even suggesting that this is a way to keep them out of the wrong hands.
And that's where things get really, really interesting.
Definitely.
What is Zelensky really after here? Is he being genuine when he says he's trying to make a win-win for everyone by leveraging these resources? Or is this all just a strategic play?
Right.
I mean, could this be a way for him to appeal to certain interests?
Yeah.
Maybe even President Trump, given what we know about his business savvy.
For sure.
And probably most important of all, how is this new focus going to affect how this whole conflict plays out?
Okay, so we've got Zelensky potentially playing a new hand with these mineral resources.
Yeah.
But then we've also got President Trump, who seems to be pushing for a very, very quick end to the war. Maybe within his first 100 days even.
Yeah.
And it seems like the way he wants to achieve this is through some kind of negotiated settlement.
Yes. And this is where things get a little complicated. We've got President Putin repeatedly saying Russia's ready to negotiate, no preconditions.
Right.
At first glance, this seems pretty straightforward. It sounds like he wants to end the conflict diplomatically. But
at the exact same time, they're also building up their military. It kind of sends a mixed message, don't you think?
It does. It really does. This military buildup, this could be Putin being smart. Maybe it's a way to give himself more leverage if negotiations actually do happen.
Right.
It would definitely strengthen their position.
Yeah.
On the other hand, maybe this is how they're getting ready if those diplomatic efforts completely fail. Maybe they're preparing for a big offensive.
Classic Putin, keeping everyone guessing.
Yeah.
So let's say these negotiations do actually happen. What are the main things that are going to get in the way?
Well, it seems pretty clear that for Putin, those June 16th lines, those are non-negotiable. These lines, just as a reminder, are the administrative borders of the 4 regions Russia says they've annexed. So essentially, that's his starting point for any agreement. That's the bare minimum.
That's a pretty big sticking point, though, wouldn't you say? Especially when you consider Zelensky and his new emphasis on all that mineral wealth Ukraine has.
Yeah.
A lot of that wealth is in those disputed regions.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder, is Zelensky actually willing to give those territories up? Especially knowing how much economic power they hold. When you look at how he's been acting recently, well, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. And then you have President Trump, who just recently offered a huge aid package to Israel, while at the same time withholding aid from Ukraine. I mean, do you think that could be a strategic move to try to pressure Zelensky, to kind of nudge him toward taking a negotiated settlement?
I think that's a very sharp observation. It really does look like a calculated move. It's almost like everyone's playing some high-stakes chess game. Every move has to be really thought out with so many implications to consider.
So it's like this delicate dance, right?
Right.
We have people pushing for a negotiated settlement, but then if those fail, things could easily spiral out of control. So what happens if they can't break this stalemate? What could that lead to?
One of the most worrying things is the very real chance of a full-on Russian offensive. Russia's getting stronger militarily all the time, and if they decide to go all in, there's a real chance they could overwhelm Ukraine's defenses.
Yeah.
That could lead to the collapse of the front lines.
And I mean, I can't even imagine how devastating that would be for Ukraine. You're talking about a massive loss of life. The casualties would be enormous. They're already stretched thin as it is.
It's a grim thought. There's no doubt about that. But it's not just about the people who would be killed and injured. If we take a step back, if we look at the big picture, a drawn-out war in Ukraine could destabilize the whole region. It could even drag in other global powers and potentially start an even bigger fight.
There's this really interesting disconnect between what Russia says and what some Western leaders are claiming. Russia keeps saying they're ready to negotiate, but then you have leaders like the UK's foreign secretary who are basically saying, we don't see any evidence of that.
Yeah, it is a bit of a head scratcher. It makes you wonder if the West is really seeing the whole picture,
Right. Or are they getting it right? Are they going to be able to help make peace? If the key players are working with bad information, well, That's not good.
And it's not just the diplomatic stuff that's raising eyebrows. There are a lot of people questioning whether giving Ukraine more military aid is actually the right move.
Right.
I mean, specifically sending them fighter jets.
Yeah.
Some experts are saying that might just prolong the fighting instead of actually fixing anything.
It's like they're throwing gasoline on a fire instead of putting it out.
Yeah.
Some people are saying that maybe it'd be better to figure out what caused this conflict in the first place and then focus on those diplomatic solutions, instead of just sending more weapons.
Okay, so we've gone over this whole complicated situation in Ukraine, right? You have shifting motivations, the possibility of negotiations, and then this constant threat of military action. What does this actually mean for the people who are stuck in the middle of all of this? What does it mean for what's going to happen to Ukraine? That's the big question, isn't it? The stakes are incredibly high for everyone, and it's hard to see a clear path forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. And it seems like we're running out of time.
Yeah.
With President Trump wanting everything settled in his first 100 days, there's a lot of pressure to get this figured out.
Definitely. So if these meetings actually do happen, what needs to go down for there to even be a chance at peace?
Honestly, I think everyone needs to be honest and willing to compromise, of course. They need to be realistic about what they want.
And what they're willing to give up.
Exactly. No one's going to get everything they want.
So you're saying there are going to be some really tough choices to make. And pretty soon, too.
Oh, absolutely. The longer everyone waits, the harder it's going to be to find a solution that works for anyone.
And every day that goes by, well, more people die. It's just awful.
It is. It really is. And it shows you just how urgent this all is. We need to find a way to make peace.
So as we watch all this unfold, what should we be looking for? What are the signs that things are actually moving in the right direction? Or the wrong one, for that matter?
Well, I think we need to see some real dialogue happening.
Like actual conversation.
Yeah, like, are they actually listening to each other?
Right.
Are they trying to be creative and come up with solutions that work for everyone? Or are they just stuck in their own little worlds, repeating the same demands over and over?
Makes sense. And what about, like, the military stuff? Is there anything specific we should be looking out for there?
For sure. We need to watch if things are actually calming down on the ground. Are they still building up their militaries? Or are they starting to pull back troops?
Are they attacking less?
Yeah, things like that. At the end of the day, actions are going to speak a lot louder than words.
So we're basically looking for proof that they actually want peace, not just saying it.
Exactly. What they do matters a lot more than what they say.
Okay, so taking all of that into account, what do you think is most likely to happen? Are they going to be able to work out a deal, or are things going to get worse?
Oh, I wish I knew. It's really hard to say for sure. There are just so many things happening at once.
Yeah.
It's changing all the time, too. I mean, there are definitely reasons to be hopeful,
Okay.
but also reasons to be worried.
What makes you hopeful?
Well, it's a good sign that both Putin and Trump have said they want the war to be over.
Right.
It would be good for both of them.
And what about the other side? What are you worried about?
Well, they haven't exactly had the best track record, have they? There's been a lot of broken promises and a lot of mistrust.
Definitely.
That's going to be hard to get past. Plus, as we were talking about earlier, the sticking points are still there. Like, who gets what territory? Those could be deal breakers.
And then there's Zelensky. We still don't know for sure what his end game is, do we?
Yeah.
Does he want a negotiated settlement, or is he more interested in those mineral resources?
That's the big unknown in all of this. He could really change how things go.
So it sounds like there is a chance for peace, but it's not going to be easy.
Not at all. This is going to take some serious skill and some serious diplomacy.
And it's not just about stopping the fighting, right? It's about fixing what caused the problem in the first place.
Exactly. We need peace in the region, long-term peace.
Right. If they rush this or do it wrong, the whole thing could blow up again.
Absolutely. We need a solution that's actually going to last, not just something temporary.
So as we wrap up our look at all of this, what's the one thing you want people to remember?
That this whole situation in Ukraine is complicated.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
No quick fixes.
Right. And we should be careful about buying into simple stories or thinking that anyone's completely right or wrong.
It's really important to stay informed and to talk to each other about this stuff, to think about what we believe and why.
Yeah, all of that. And I think it's also super important to remember the people. There are actual people whose lives have been turned upside down because of this war.
It's easy to get lost in all the political stuff,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is about people.
Yeah. Their stories matter. And we can't forget what they're going through.
Right. That human side of things needs to be at the front of our minds. So as we leave everyone with all of this to think about, what really stands out to you? What do you think is going to happen? Will they find a way to make peace, or is this going to get even worse?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Things are changing so fast. And what happens in the next few weeks, even the next few months, could really change everything, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole world.
It really makes you think about how connected everything is, doesn't it?
It does.
What these leaders decide is going to affect so many people.
Yeah, it does. It's a good reminder that we need to try to understand what's happening.
Absolutely. And to remember that people are going through something really tough right now, for sure. And with so much up in the air about Ukraine's future, I mean, it could be a bit overwhelming trying to figure out what comes next, right?
Yeah, it's true. But there are a few key things to keep in mind as we try to make sense of this. Like we talked about, President Trump wants a resolution fast, within 100 days.
Yeah.
That puts a pretty tight deadline on everything, right? On any negotiations, decisions, everything.
Right. That 100-day window is a big deal.
It is.
It's going to make things happen fast, but that could be good or bad.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer of pressure. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Zelensky handles it all. I mean, will he focus on keeping all of Ukraine's territory?
Right.
Or will he use those mineral resources as leverage to get something else?
It's almost like he's got two different plans, and we don't know which one he'll choose.
Exactly. And his decision will probably come down to a lot of things, like how much support he gets from the West, how strong Russia looks, maybe even what he thinks Trump wants.
It's like a really high-stakes poker game.
It is, yeah. They're all trying to figure each other out. And the stakes are, well, they're enormous. What happens here will change things, not just in Ukraine, but maybe even for the whole world.
So knowing all of that, what's your gut feeling? Do you think they'll be able to negotiate peace, or are we headed for more fighting?
Well, it's tough to say for sure, but I think even with everything going on, I think there's still a chance they can make a deal. Both Trump and Putin have said they want the war to end, so that's something. And there might be some room for compromise, even on things like, who gets what land.
That's a good point. But even if they do make a deal, what kind of peace are we talking about?
Right. Will it actually last? Or will it just be a break before things blow up again?
Exactly.
And that all comes down to whether they're really serious about finding solutions that work for everyone.
So it might not be about armies and who has the most power. Maybe it's about whether these leaders can think about more than just themselves, about what's good for everyone.
That's a really good point.
It gives me some hope, at least.
Yeah.
It reminds us that there's always a chance for things to get better. But we have to stay involved, stay informed, and try to understand each other.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. This has been a really insightful conversation.
It has, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear.